Hello there, this is Big Benedict. We're playing Dead Space 2 on Zealot difficulty, and this is my no damage run through the campaign on the hardest difficulty. And this is Chapter 13. You might be wondering, what the hell am I doing here? Why am I throwing these benches and these trash can receptacles down to the below area? Where, if you played this game before, you know that there is a pretty big gauntlet of enemies to take care of. It's because there are two holes. We made two holes with the drills, as far as I can surmise. What we did is we crashed through one side of the building, and there are a couple of ingress points for enemies that will be kicking off once you go into the below area. Fight a few, like two enemies, which varies a little bit, and then as you move up the stairs actually in that room, those stairs right there. So what I'm doing by taking these pieces. And by the way, only take the pieces in the hall right here, because if you attempt to go through the door to the left and take some more benches, or even a bench like this and take it back, it may disappear. The ones, if you go through the door that I mentioned a moment ago and take a bench, it will just disappear right in your hands, like it has happened before. And I suspect, I kind of hoped that what I threw down there would remain, even through deaths, although I don't think there is any fights that are difficult, even hardly any. I don't think there's anything, really. Is there? No, there's nothing. There's just this, which is exposition, which I'll fast forward, a long period of exposition. So I actually do think that the benches and those trash can receptacles, they do stay down there. The reason I was trying to make was that those two ingress points, there's one that has a really dense mob of enemies that comes out of it. Like the main route that the enemies will come, they come out of one of the holes. So if you could put a bunch of rubble in front of it, they have a hard time getting out. And it's a room where you can access the door, which is to say you can access the hacking mechanism which opens the door. But it's kind of like the Evil Within, now that I think about it. They kind of tempt you with it, but you're only going to be able to open the door if there are no enemies running at you. If there are enemies trapped in that room, you can make off with it. But what I wanted to do was leave this in real time. So let's see if what I threw down here is in here. It looks like it is, to be honest. It looks like there's a couple of extra things in here. So this is the ingress point that I refer to. Now you don't have to do this, but it's pretty helpful. And what you do is you seal up this area as tightly as possible with benches and with these things. Now, if you go up the room a little bit, you'll spawn the fight. About halfway up the room, you'll spawn the fight. You don't want to do that. What that also means is that you can't use the kinesis. Since you can't upgrade the kinesis's reach in this game, you can also not, therefore, grab things at long ranges. I'm not sure why that is, but they've decided to change it in this game. But regardless, you just want to put as many pieces of refuse in front of this, because they're all going to come through here. All save a few enemies. And the best thing to do, really, because this is a challenging room, the best thing you want to do is seal those enemies up so that you can... See, you don't even have to not fight them. You can still fight them, but on your own terms. You can start shooting them, and they can try to stagger out eventually. But this is another ingress. You might also wonder, why don't you just put mines on that ingress point? It's because there's so many enemies that only the first one or two would get killed. And this way, you do or you don't have to fight them, depending on how tightly you seal up that hole. And then for the lurkers, we're going to put a couple of these on here. So I just wanted to have this strategy on here in case some people are doing this and they're doing hardcore and they're having a lot of troubles here. I would be remiss if I didn't show the strategy, because it's pretty well known. I did not create it. I saw somebody doing it a long time ago, and hence... so as you can see right there, actually you might be able to grab a table, because the spawn point actually triggers when you go outside. So you can go up this hallway as far as you want to. But at this point, you're going to have enemies coming out of the one hole, and then the hole in the distance that I'm aiming at right now. Not now, but in a moment. Right over here. And as you may or may not be able to see, there are enemies trying to get clear of that refuse area. And if you can just kill all the enemies that come out, save for those enemies, you will be able to go up and access the hacking terminal to open the door, and you don't have to kill those enemies. Now, I disrupted it a little bit by shooting these enemies, and that disrupted where the refuse containers were going to be kept. So I think everybody came out, with some exceptions. I think maybe some of the enemies at the rear weren't able to come out. But suffice to say that Black Slasher and a couple of these guys, I think these guys are contained back there too. So if you don't do that strategy, you could simply lay mines and then come back here and protect yourself with mines on your left and mines on the other doorway. And it's pretty challenging, and there's not really anywhere to stand that's very good, and that's why one falls back on a strategy like that. But I could have made a run for it, but I just wanted to show you at this point what the enemies were up to over here. I knew at this point in time that there's no way that they had all spawned. They're still over here trapped. The only way I can zoom in is with this gun, which I downgraded in the last chapter to 0 strength at everything, so I was suffering over here because there's no bench to respec everything back to how I had it with the pulse rifle. There is no objective marker until you meet up with Nicole a little bit later, and she will show you the way to go. But one of the confusing things over here too, I noticed, and I noticed it last time too, is that there are a lot of sound effects of enemies that aren't here. They're just, it's background noise, and it can really confuse a player. Even when you've killed everybody, you'll still hear enemies screaming and screeching. So you have to realize, don't let the sound fool you, even though that's what it does best over here, the sound effects, that is. So I believe I could have made a break for it, but I'm just always tempted to see and kind of laugh at the enemies that get trapped back there. And also part of me did not know what to do here. I did not know that you had to access a hacking terminal. You'll have to pardon my ignorance. This was the first time I had gotten this far. But as you can see how they get trapped back there? There's two of the pukers back there who can't move. So in theory, what you can do is just go access the hacking terminal and just get out of the room. You don't have to fight enemies. You're not going to have the terminal get accessible once everybody's dead. It doesn't work that way. So it is a hard fight to start the level. I'm sorry it was a little bit tedious to set up everything. It's one of those fights where you have to set up before the battle, and it kind of sucks. Unless, you don't want to do that. And I toyed with the idea of doing this 2 ways, but as you can see, the fight is a long one, and it would have eaten up a lot of time in the video. Plus, there is an even harder fight coming up, so, just at this point, just like I said, don't let the sound effects fool you. But also, don't get so passive that you just assume that there's nothing there, and you're saying everything's sound effects when there's actually enemies in the vicinity. So don't forget the power node. We're going to go through the door now, and I believe everybody is dead. So the problem, as you can probably guess, is once you get on this terminal, you're not safe whatsoever. And I think I actually got off the terminal because of that very fear. And I was correct. There's a couple of these ones here who can be very problematic on a run like this. So we're going to use the old line gun to take care of these guys. And I wasn't even evading these projectiles with very much grace because I thought that I would get overrun here. But I believe that is the last spawn. So once you take care of everybody, you can use these canisters. The best way to approach that fight, honestly, and I know it's tedious and I know it sucks every time you have to do it, but just set up your mines, set up the trap, trap the enemies in that hole, and place the stasis canisters really close to you. Just there are good areas and there's bad areas. The good area is actually by the elevator. Coming out here into the open where there's no protection is not good. So once you go into this room, you will secure a checkpoint, and then when you come down here, you will have enemies shooting at you in one of the game's more action-oriented sequences. But you don't have to take damage. You run through here, into the bathrooms, collect the power node in the washing basin. Come in here, there's 2 lockers to get, and then I'll speed this up as we're crawling through the ventilation shaft. And then you still aren't given a checkpoint until you get to the save point, or in the room with the save point. So there are 2 ways to go, but the first wants to have you come up here because the door below is locked. So once you interact with this, you'll have quite a lot of exposition with Tideman and everybody getting killed by the necromorphs, which is going to be our next fight in this particular room. But you don't have to go in that room to do the fight, and I would recommend that you don't go in there. What I would recommend is that you funnel everybody into this area. They're going to come out of the 2 vents. Even the exploders, whom you wouldn't expect to be so nimble on their feet, actually can come through the vents carrying their burden, which is that grenade bomb. Also, there's a couple of bugs on the floor. That's another reason why coming out there without enemies killed is a little dangerous. Only for a run like this, though. If you're playing on hardcore, those bugs wouldn't deal too much damage to you unless a whole bunch of them jumped on you. But place your 5 mines in here, and you'll have all of the enemies coming in here, including that infector right there. So we have the damage value of this particular weapon up all the way, so that when enemies run into it, they should get killed if it makes a good connection. And what you can do actually is, if you want to fight everybody in this room with the advantage, because they'll never come through the door to your left. They're always going to come in through the vents. That's their route. You can lure I think you can lure everybody except the pukers, because the pukers, I think one of the pukers has lost his legs. But you will come in here now and face these pukers. And I'm just going to fight them out here. At this point, I forgot about the bugs. I thought the bugs attended one of the necromorphs. And it was only until at the very end that I saw the bugs. And it was... the reason I even saw them was because I heard ominous music, and that meant that there were still enemies in the vicinity. But we've taken out the exploder. We've taken out those 2 pukers. So what you can do is you can come into this room, you can leave this room, have one of the pukers go into the vents, and you can funnel them in there. As I mentioned, even the exploder will come through the vents. But you'll still have to take care of the belcher, who has no legs, and also the bugs, who don't go through vents. And then you'll come in here and collect all your loot, and then proceed onwards, and then you will get a checkpoint as you go through the security area of the next room. So there are still some bugs here, and that's probably why the music won't subside. So in effect, these bugs could have ruined my entire session right here. I thought that was a bug. Oh, okay, I know what happened. I killed them off camera. I went back in there to do some editing because I didn't know if I had collected everything, and then I found the bugs just tumbling over themselves in a corner. So this I will not need to fast forward. I think in chapter 1 I mentioned that you don't need to step on corpses that you haven't killed because they don't yield money. In a couple fights forward, we will be getting some loot from enemies we haven't killed. So in this room, just throw him or carry him through that the security area, and then we will have access to a node room door, and they're gonna punish you for accessing the node room door, sadly. Oh, we're not quite there yet. We're not there yet. Okay, so what's going to spawn over here? This is a pretty difficult fight, but I learned to just stay in one place, actually, is a lot better. So you're going to have one of the mineshaft workers coming in, and then you'll have a belcher / puker coming the way that we came in that circular room over there. So just prepare for his arrival in the normal fashion. The guy that jumped out of the vent, the first enemy, you'll have to come over here for him to spawn, or close in the distance on the vent that he spawns out of. And if you want to, you can save your progress at this point, so that You won't have to over here. I didn't. I kind of took this. Okay, here's what I did. I died once over here to this guy. I don't even think I died. He popped up. He may have stunned me, and I said, okay, I want to be more prepared for when he comes in here, so I'll just reset from checkpoint. I don't think I stayed back here on my other guide. I think I went forward and I was using the contact beam. I will be using the contact beam on the final boss, which is a very simple encounter, but it's sped up significantly by the contact beam, so if you're saddened that I haven't premiered it in this guide, I apologize, but I've been trying to stick to basics on this guide. And there are a lot of enemies that come in here, and I would say that the more you move around in here, the more that they're going to sneak up on you. So if you can just stay in the back corner, you'll have everybody coming right to you. And even though that might sound pretty dangerous, even if they're running at you, as long as they're not like at the end of their clawing attack, which most enemies do, they'll have a claw attack at you. As long as they're not even like before they do the wind up for that, it happens quite a bit. As long as you stasis them, then you can kill them before they hit you, provided that you kill them before they come out of stasis and start slashing at you again. So it's very fair in that regard. I'm not sure why they decrease the time that you use the stasis in the next game, but perhaps I can understand it a little bit, just in view of the fact that it does seem a little bit overpowered. So maybe that was their motivation. Okay, a moment ago when I said that you're going to have to pay the price for getting the node, it's because of the fact that once you exit the node room door, it should be coming up by now. There will be a divide. Yeah, it's this room. There will be a divider that greets you, although you can greet him by using the detonating mines here. I have yet to kill this guy with detonating mines. I suspect that he just disassembles and you'll have to kill the smaller parts to him. But it looks like he is dropping some items for us. So what we have in store for us is the power lock enabled door. We'll use a node to open it. And you might want to be a little skeptical of this room. I'm not sure if it has enough stuff that would equal over 9,000. You want to remember to every time you're making a purchase, if you want to be economical, you don't have to, because it does take longer than it should to switch suits, in my opinion. But you always should be using the vintage suit to make purchases, because you do get that 10% discount, and that makes for a lot of extra ammo. So a lot of times when I'm playing this game, I think that I am getting hit. So if I have something in my inventory to heal me, then I'll rapidly tap on the O button just to kind of confirm to myself that I'm not getting hit. It's just, if you see the little glow on his back, meaning that I'm using the healing item, it's just to make sure that I'm not taking any damage. But the next room, it'll be the final encounter with stalkers in the game, and there's no real issue to it, in my opinion. You've got the webbing on the floor that slows your steps a little bit. Now, I know exactly where these guys are coming. They're coming off of that broken area up there. They'll jump from where the rail is broken onto that block that I'm shooting onto now. So I'm going to try to place a couple of mines here. But what I suspected was true, namely that when they jump down, they're not really fully buffered into the environment, or into the fight rather, until they're on the block. So they don't take it. Like, for instance, right there, I thought I may have gotten hit. You never want to, like, I don't want everything I'm doing to be in vain. And the only thing about that is that, if I happen to miss taking some damage here or there, but Isaac usually gives out some pretty good indications that if he's getting hit, he staggers and makes a noise. So I've never had any trouble with these guys. I mean, if you have, I'd be interested to know what's going on with that. Not to mock you or anything, but just to maybe give you some more tactics that you can deal with them. I did have a hard time with those guys, I will admit. Like when I was first playing this game, because they're so damn fast, and I don't think I was acquainted with all the arsenal in the game at that point. But it's just the stasis is incredibly helpful, maybe even overpowered. And I'm not sure if that was why they downgraded it in Dead Space 3, but they made a lot of stupid decisions in that game that I don't even want to talk about it. That game, I will never do a no damage run for a game that I have no respect for. let's face it. I mean, it's just a blasé experience. It's a 5 out of 10. It's mediocre. The gameplay is good. It's not great. The mechanics are the same way. So I guess it fell into that Ninja Gaiden 3 area of being really trashy. And that's a really bad shame, because I was very excited for Dead Space 3 until I started to see what it was all about and the gameplay and the decisions that they made for it. So anyway, once that area is clear, you want to make sure as you make your way to the save station here that you take this thing out. It won't kill you if you go to the save station, but you could accidentally forget about it after you exit the save station. Okay, as I said, it's not going to kill you. However, one thing that I wanted to caution people about on this chapter is something pretty obvious, but you might not realize it unless you're pretty worse for wear, I guess the metaphor would be, or the colloquial expression, which you'll have to excuse me for. The two stores in this chapter are at the very beginning and at the very end of the wow. At the very beginning and at the very end of the chapter, you would think that there would be one in between, but there's not. So it can make your life inconvenienced, to say the least. Now this room here, there's no threat if you're playing on Zealot, but if you're playing on hardcore, you don't want to do any reloading when you're sprinting from one of these sections of the building to the other, because a reload is going to slow you down and you'll never make it from point A to point B. So this room, it has the one guy that jumped out and then 2 crawlers, so take them out. Yeah, and then when you get into the next room, there's going to be 2 more exploding babes. So just do a sprint, and you can just kill these guys from out here. I believe I missed some plasma cutter rounds, but it's not the end of the world. So there's just those 2 guys, and then you want to do your last sprint here. Fire a couple of good shots here, well-placed shots. Just do some stasising and then turn around, because this crawler here can sneak up on you and do some damage to you. So that's kind of an annoying section. It's not too bad though. And then we're going to be coming up on a section which I can show you how to deal with without using any bullets. However, it does require a few mines. So when I last did this, and by the way, one of the things that I keep referring to my annotated guide, it's one way of me bringing that guide to this channel, but in a different way, with a better like more aspirations, I think, and but with the same advice. That's why I'm often just referring to my old advice, which to you is new advice because you most probably never saw it. So the reason I'm placing that mine there is because somebody will mantle over that balcony. Someone's also going to jump out of this vent. So when you get into the corner, this corner right here, you advance and then you fall back. So get these, advance a little bit, fall back, and then you'll have the guys. There he is. He bursted out of the vent on top, and we'll have another slasher taking that route to us. But if you place the mine thusly, he won't get to you. He gets killed every time that I've seen him, and I've only ever seen him in several pieces. So in video 1, I mentioned that there were bodies, an exception to the rule about corpses on the ground that you can get loot from that you haven't killed. This is the only exception in the game. Otherwise, if you stumble across corpses in the game, they're not going to yield anything. But strangely, look at that store. I think it was a mistake not to put a store here, because a lot of players are going to get to this part. And I've come to this part and I've had like 5 bullets. I think I have about like 75 or 80 at this point for my plasma cutter, but that's only because I've done this stage many times. Now, this part here is potentially the hardest fight in the game. And what I'm going to show you is the best tactic to get through it and get to the checkpoint, because it's an almost never-ending gauntlet of enemies coming through the vents. You will see a crossfade over here because I killed these babes, and then I went back to save it because I was tired of killing them every single time. So unfortunately, even if you save, you have to kill a couple. So what we're going to do here is plant some mines at first. You're going to have the only thing you really need to concern yourself with is the first wave, because that's the wave that you need to take the numbers out quickly and then just get to the floor beneath us. So I'm placing those mines in front of that vent because an exploder comes out of there. We really won't need to deal with him though. So what we will need to do is take this canister because it gives us the longest stasis freeze on enemies. And once we see the enemies, we are just going to let loose with the canister and then make a run for this room. You almost don't even have enough ammunition for the number of enemies here, but you can wean their numbers down by going ahead of the spawn here. So when you get into this room, immediately turn around and throw the mine behind you, and then get on these guys with the line gun. And if you hurry, you won't have to. I mean, I don't even think you have to hurry. I think if you get into this room, you just kill the enemies that we've just killed, and then you're all fine. But you don't get a checkpoint yet. You only get a checkpoint when you get to the brute. So we're going to go into this room, and we're going to snag this and do the same trick. So once we get about over, I'm going to turn around, chuck the stasis, and then make a break for it. When you get into this room, there is the temptation to get the loot, but I don't think anybody follows you. So it can be kind of nerve-wracking to stick around, but I decided I'll just get the items because I was almost certain that they don't come, and they don't. So that's definitely a recommendation to follow, because otherwise it just goes on and on forever almost. I mean, it does have an ending, but I don't think I've never done it without taking damage, and it's just one of those fights where it's not in your best interest to do the fight. It's not required, and it's just the way to go. I don't know how else to say it. But if you do perish down here on Zealot, you will get a checkpoint, so all of what you've just done is not going to be in vain. However, if you die on hardcore, you'll be sent back to your most recent save. So we're just going to hit this guy with the seeker rifle, throw a mine his way, sever his shoulders, get the drop from him, and then get out of the room. And I don't believe there are any more enemies on this chapter, but there is a final thing to do with the eye poker machine. So once you do this, you're just going to be running room to room, and you'll finally get the opportunity to go to the store, go to the bench, offload all of the unwanted inventory that you're carrying. And what I did was I sold everything. I had about 10 med packs that I was carrying, and I respec'd all the things on the seeker rifle because I planned to take it out of my inventory. And having done that, what I then did was I equipped the vintage suit to purchase the contact beam, which was 3,100, down from 4,000, I believe, or it's 3,600, something like that. So what I now have for the final stretch is everything that I had before, except now I don't have the seeker rifle, and in place of that I have the contact beam. So everything here is going to be fast forwarded. Now the thing about the eye poker machine is that you'll hear his heart beating, And if it's going too fast, his eyes are going to be moving around a lot more quickly, and meaning that you can't get the needle into the eye. So what you need to do is just make him relax. How you do that is you just stop pressing the context button, which is A. So obviously red is bad, blue is good. It doesn't get to be extremely dangerous unless the needle is very close to the eye. But basically, you just want to do very small steps, make him relax by not pressing anything, so that his eye moves not very much, and then just poke when it's blue, and you win. Take care.